Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM. This is a show where we just talk about gaming, things that we love about gaming. Good games, good board games, reviews, advice on campaigns, discussions of settings, discussions of show on the Iconic Production channel. It is just a potpourri of games and fun things that we enjoy talking about. So today I'm going to talk about something that will eventually get to gaming, but it's going to begin with a story about my wife. So my wife, who does a lot of editing for Strange Owls, line editor on, or line developer manager for Torg, a lot of interaction between the things I like and the things that she's involved with, kind of funny like that. She loves to knit and crochet. And this has led to many, many, many large bins filled with brightly colored strands of fiber in my house. There's always a bag or two or three or four scattered throughout the house with projects, little needles and stitch markers and tightly wound balls of yarn for some blanket or shawl or other project that she is working on. And to my eye, like, why do you need all these different projects? Just do one project and move on. Well, you know, she explains that she has to be able to bounce back and forth. She gets stuck on one project, she gets inspiration from another. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand that. And a couple of years ago, she and her friends decided to not buy any more yarn until they had moved through what they call their stash. They have a stash busting challenge. And actually, I wrote a little bit about this on my now defunct blog, Origins of a Dark God. And what was interesting to me about this is, as I heard her talk about her hobby and what she was passionate about, one, I realized never a good idea to point fingers at someone else's hobby. Because even as I just look around just the studio, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves, a cabinet, and a full chest of drawers that is filled with hobby material. That doesn't count the 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves inside the house that are laden with role-playing books, as well as the 2 shelves of board games. So we'll just not comment about the volume of hobbies and how they relate to each other. That's not the point of this video. And yes, indeed, good morning to everyone in the chat. Grom, always good to see you. I really appreciated your comment on the Raising Up New Game Masters video. Very insightful, I agree. The value of friends and community as part of this is just, it's why we, or at least is one of the reasons I continue to engage in this hobby. And John Doom, as always, it is good to see you, sir. I had a friend recently ask me, because he was like, hey, what do you got going on this week? I was like, oh man, it's a busy week. I have Blackbirds on Monday and Deadlands on Tuesday and RuneQuest Glorantha on Wednesday. And then on Sunday, I have, Saturday I'm recording the new Torg podcast, and Sunday I'm recording the new Iconic Production podcast, and then I'm also running my 2E D&D game. He's like, how the hell do you get all of this done in a week? I was like, I don't know, it's just what I'm passionate about. So anyway, getting back to my wife's hobby problem, not my hobby problem. They did this thing called the stash busting, where they took what they had before they brought new things in, and they completed projects with them. And I was like, man, I need something like that in my life. Because if you're like me, you've got a ton of role-playing books in your house. Some of us, myself included, will buy role-playing games just to read them and look at the pretty pictures. And they sit on our shelves, and from time to time we'll take them off and reread them to rekindle a spark of inspiration, to try and put together what's in my head. Go from there. And it got me wondering, could I do a stash busting challenge? And like most things behind the screens, if I'm wondering about it, I'm going to share it with you guys. So I don't necessarily mean, like, there's one way to kind of do this, to go do the, hey, this year I'm not going to buy new role-playing games until I've at least used some of the stuff on my shelf. Whether that's a one-shot or a two-shot. Because here's the thing, you'll never know if your group will glom onto a new game unless you try something. I've had wonderful campaigns that have spun out on a one or two shot that I was just like, man, I really just want to run Shadows of Estrin because the books are beautiful, and I really just want to get it at the table. And that launched a 2-year campaign. The Blackbirds campaign. Bought the book because it was beautiful and was like, man, I really want to give this a shot. And we had our first session on Monday night, and it was so weird and horrific and strange. It was, in my opinion, the perfect start to a Blackbirds campaign. Heck, this is how Deadlands started. This is how our Horror at Headstone Hill game was launched. I was like, I need to play some Deadlands. Let's get a group together. Reached out to Shane, and sort of the rest is history. So John, let's see here. You said, first of all, Rook, thank you for the subscription and the generosity. And man, 40 months is a coup. Here's to you, Rook. And that's right. Rook was like, I want in. Rook and I were talking about Savage Worlds, so that also precipitated the stream. So John said, is this stuff this is my full-time gig. Between everything I do for Iconic Production, between everything I do for Strange Owl, as well as the stuff I do for 13th Age and Peg and Ulysses, this is my full-time hustle. I do all of the Iconic Production stuff. I do the Savage Universe community licensee manager. I am the line developer for 13th Age. With 13th Age 2nd Edition, I'm got a lot of stuff that I'm working on there. I write for Torg. I write for Savage Worlds. And I am the studio head at Strange Owl Games. So I'm hustling faster than a one-legged man in a ass-kicking contest. So it is a lot, but I have to keep all the plates spinning. But so far, it has been good and a blessing to be able to do this full time. So far, none of the plates have crashed. So anyway, that's one way to look at your stash, to stash bust, to just get games off the shelf. I mean, look at Rook and I got to play Deadlands, and that spawned an entirely new love of Savage Worlds for both of us. I hope, Rook, that you get Savage Worlds to your table sooner rather than later. But here's the other thing. I don't think it's a secret. I think any GM who has been doing this long enough has come across it. Systems are not entirely incompatible. You don't necessarily need to stop your current game to bring in something you love from another game. Now, settings, that's easy. You know, if you're playing 5th edition D&D or Savage Pathfinder and you're like, I have all of this Symbaroum stuff and I love the Drachenwald, I think is what they call it. I'm just going to put that whole thing into my campaign. We've been doing that from time immemorial, right? Tolkien did it with the Poetic and Prose Edda and the Kalevala and the Volsung Saga. We do it with Axia. My 2E campaign is literally just the map of the world, is literally just all of the campaign maps from all of the 2E books that I have in Adventures stitched together in a mildly aesthetically pleasing format. Matt Colville talks about the D&D game that he played where he eventually realized it was the Black Company. Just, we're used to taking setting chunks that we like, shaking them up, and either gently pouring them into our campaign setting or just spraying the seltzer of setting goodness kind of everywhere. Oh, thanks, John. Hopefully that buzzing will go away. So, what do I mean by breaking open your books? Well, here's the thing. In my new Savage Worlds campaign, I'm stealing something from Torque. I'm taking the Martyr card and making it a setting rule. That at any point, if a Shade or an Echo wants something bad enough, and they're willing to lay down their life for it, we're going to accomplish that goal. So that's going to be a setting rule for Crucible. Because, of course, I am Rook, because I love it. Some of my best times in Numenera were actually taking monsters from 2nd edition D&D and running them as faithfully as I could in the Numenera game. You can take your favorite rules and port them other places. Sometimes they're super easy, like taking the escalation die from 13th Age and bringing it into another game system. Hey, we're just going to have this die that ticks up every round and gives you a +1 to your attack rolls. Because it represents the fact that you guys are the heroes, and the longer you fight, the more the narrative is moving in your direction. Maybe you really like humanity from Vampire, and you're like, you know what would be great to have this is? It would be great to have a humanity pool in my D&D game, because we're all going to play monsters, and I really want to run D&D, but I want something to represent how close I am to being human. Maybe it starts at 10, and as you do more humane things, this ability score goes up. Heck, you could just, yeah. And as you do, give into your bestial side, it drops down and becomes a penalty to your social roles. Maybe you really like advantage or disadvantage or boons and banes from Shadow of the Demon Lord. Man, that would be cool to bring over to a 5th edition game and replace advantage, disadvantage with boons and banes. I think that would be an awesome hack of your game system. Maybe you like bennies more than you like inspiration. Mix it up. Go through your favorite books. Go through those books that you bought for a reason and then put on your shelf. And scour them not just for setting ideas, but for mechanics. Here's the thing. Most D20 games are so... I don't think inbred is the word I'm looking for, but I'm going to go with that. Most D20 games are so similar that you could probably take a 1st edition monster, drop it into a 5th edition game, and not really change a whole lot about it, save for doing the math in your head to go from descending to ascending AC. I love that idea. Maybe replace alignment with the humanity stat. Use those things that we talked about earlier that are sitting in your Game Master's Guide that you're like, well, I'm not going to... Like, reputation, honor, sanity. Honestly, I think sanity is one of the rules that I just pick up and put in my back pocket. Just carry forward into every game that I go into. Oh, Padre brought in the Savage Worlds dramatic tasks over 5e. I love the dramatic task system in Savage Worlds. It also ports over very well because, let's be honest, skill challenges in 4th edition were very much similar. Rook, I'm a fan of the DMG proficiency alternative. Nice. See, keep that in mind. I love the Pathfinder 2 no magic rule, which changes the math that your characters use as they level up to represent the fact that the built-in magic item mechanic is removed. Heck, again, I will just say this, one of the best Dungeon Master's guides, period, is DMG 2 for 4th edition, especially the chapter on alternative rules or alternative rewards for your players. Giving them titles that give them a mechanical effect, letting them take on new training, spend 3 months training with the Purple Dragon Knights, and now you get bonuses specifically to hunt dragons. These are all things that we can pick up and run with. I keep wanting to import the madness meters from the Nemesis into another game, but I haven't run a setting that it would use them. Nice. 4E tried to have dramatic tasks, but Savage made a more perfect version. I agree. I like the token system for dramatic tasks. I also think that you know what honestly, what rule from Savage I'm looking at bringing into my 5th edition game? It's quick encounters. I love the idea of being able to zoom out a little bit and not have to fight the same thing inches repetition. One of the things I love about Domains at War for Adventure Conqueror King is the microscope dial that they have. Do you want to fight every battle and siege upon a board? We've got rules for that. Do you want to abstract it with a couple of rolls? Hell yes. So you can adjust what you're doing based off of what your characters and your players want. And I think even if you don't want to take the Domains of War rules, which are brilliant and are mostly compatible with most modern 5th edition games, even though it is clearly a BX system at its core, take that mindset, pick it up, pull it apart, and use it in your game. It's how I'm focusing with, Crucible. I have rules in Savage Worlds to go from tactical miniatures combat to go from a duel, so one-on-one with just hyper focus. I'm adapting the duel rules from Deadlands for Aijutsu duels in Crucible. So when people get into one-on-one sword fights where it all comes down to, first strike, we're going to use those. So we have hyper-focused one-on-one combat rules. We have tactical miniatures rules. We have quick encounter rules. And we have mass combat rules. And you can play with that slider. And that's even if you don't do anything but pick up your Savage Worlds book and read through it with an eye for, hey, how could I take something I love about this system and replicate it in whatever game I'm running? This is the creativity that is wonderful about being a DM. Say you want to have mass combat and you just do not want to deal with the minutia of running individual battles, or even using the old art, they had some great mass combat rules very early on in Unearthed Arcana that I used to run a massive siege in Tanar. Still remains one of the best sessions that I've done. People still talk about it. And it was like a 5-hour game just for the one mass combat. There are so many great, highly narrative mass combat rule sets out there. One of the ones I love is the Legend of the Five Rings mass combat system, where basically each round the character only has to decide how heavily they are engaged. Are they fighting in the reserves, or are they heavily engaged in the front line? Everyone makes a roll. In L5R, you use your battle skill, but in this case, you could use your intelligence modifier with proficiency bonus. And that tells you how well you were able to maintain your position in the battle, and then each style or each rank that you're fighting in, from heavily engaged to reserve, you roll on a table after that to see what happened. Did you lose some hit points? Did you get called out and ended up in a duel with an enemy champion, which we're now going to play out in combat rounds real quick? Did you take something? Did you capture an enemy flag or destroy the enemy artillery, in which case you now have a bonus to your reputation? Did you take prisoners? Did you kill your prisoners? All of these kind of are encapsulated in this beautiful chart that would be so easy to replicate in any other game system. Quick Encounters is a fun addition. And I love the dangerous quick encounters. Again, just another little tweak to that system that is, wonderful. Rook, you want to be involved in a duel? We'll have to get you to guest star for an adventure in Crucible, and we'll make you a duelist. I mean, in the game that you made, what did I want to play? I wanted to play an orc samurai because yeah. So, Padre, which version of L5R did you play? I really feel like second and fourth edition are I personally feel like fourth edition L5R is the pinnacle of L5R, both setting and mechanics wise. It is hands down the best. I like the fact that it had every era of play available and open to it. I like the fact that they had so many alternate histories. So the Thousand Years of Darkness, as well as several other potential points in the card game storyline where things could have gone one way or the other. It was awesome to me. The mechanics for the duels, I think, finally hummed. My big problem with L5R 4th edition was core rulebook needed to be much better edited. For example, in my first printing, it was like, on the next page, you will see the standard difficulty numbers for tasks in L5R. That chart was missing. And at that time, AEG's customer service was somewhat lacking. And I, in my hot-headed youth, after a particularly disastrous interaction over a missing card from a box set that I'd spent quite a bit of money on, swore off the company and swore off the books. Probably not my brightest move. It's amazing how hindsight changes the actions that we thought were so righteous in the moment and makes us look more like the ass than we thought we were. Late 90s would have been first or second edition L5R. Second edition was great. It was at that time when game companies weren't necessarily looking to create a new game, but that the second edition of games were basically just revisions, kind of taking everything they learned from, the couple of years out, and just revising the rule book. So what's on your shelf right now? What are books that you have purchased, games that you have thought you wanted to run that have sat on your shelf gathering dust? Is it something you can go out and get a gaming group put together for at least a one-shot in the next month? Go out and do it. Get some use out of the book besides just the delicious intellectual enjoyment of consuming it. I think it's one of the things that I love about role-playing games is that if we engage with them, it is one of the few places in our lives where we are not just consumers. We're creators. That act of sub-creation is worth every penny that we spend on a book. So get out and play a game. Give it a shot. Even hell, just build some characters and throw them into a fight to learn better about the mechanics of the game. Take it off the shelf and read it. Is there one that you really wanted to be playing, but you know your group will never even give it a shot? What can you steal for that for the game they do want to play? I feel like that's something I wish I had more in the forefront of my mind when I sit down to games. What are some other games that are similar enough to what I want to run that I could draw on for inspiration? And again, not for settings, because let's be honest, we as GMs, we copy and steal everything from a setting we like anyway. Let's start applying that to the rule systems. John says he needs to run a game of white box Paranoia. That is a game. I'm not trying to call anyone out, Tink. This is focused at me. This is a mindset change that I've been pondering and I wanted to share. Dreamwalker: The Princess Bride Saga Edition. Never mind the PDFs. Oh yeah, I could never even possibly attempt to run every game I have bought on PDF and run. My drive-through RPG account is the digital bookshelves are bowing under the weight of the virtual weight of the PDF collection that I have. Yeah, I am not a. We could talk about that some point. The Genesis system and I I played a lot of it when it was the Warhammer 3rd Edition system. We still squint eyes at each other while we walk in opposite directions at the game shelf or at the game store. But anyway, that's what I had for today. I thought it would be a fun share to just think about the games on your shelf and how you can interact with them. Maybe it's getting them started, like I said, maybe getting a new game started. Maybe it's just reading through it for fun and going, oh man, this would be a great mechanic to pull over into the game I'm currently running, and I would use it like this. Oh man, Humble Bundle. Whew. Oh yeah, Saga Edition was a lot of fun. I would say that Saga Edition after WEG is my favorite way to play Star Wars. I just bought the Pathfinder Humble Bundle, and I just have to say, maybe we'll do that next week. Maybe we'll show off the Foundry options for the Abomination Vaults. Because I gotta say, I think I spent 25 or 30 bucks on that Humble Bundle. I don't even know if it's still going on. It is worth it alone for the Foundry module for the Pathfinder Abomination Vaults. That is just a well put together Foundry module. So that's it for me today. We'll be back on Sunday. We're going to be looking at the second half of Swords of the Serpentine, really the GM section of it. Kind of get that outline out to Becca and Mark. I'll do that when I go inside. And we'll be back next week. We're going to be running some Torg for the next couple of weeks, looking at Pan Pacifica. Players are already gathering their archetypes and choosing what they're going to pick. And I'm sure there will be other fun things as we move toward our 100th episode of Behind the Screen in 2 weeks, where we talk about beauty and gaming. It'll be a little bit more intellectual, a little bit more rambly, may even be longer than our 20-minute episode, but I look forward to talking about some of these things. And yes, Certified Turganic, there will be Torg. Oh yes, there will be Torg. Padre's still one of my favorite adventures that I have adapted. I think I've said this before. Adapted to almost every game system that I've ever run is Tatooine Manhunt. I adore that adventure for WEG. It was the first, it might have been the first like RPG adventure I had ever read. Because I think I said, when I got into it, GURPS really didn't have adventures. And Palladium didn't really have adventures. You bought source books that had maybe a big encounter, like, at the back of the Old Gods, there was the Complex of Magic. In Rifts, we had a ton of hook, line, and sinkers, or big events like the Juicer Uprising. But the first adventure, like the first book that I picked up to actually read as an adventure, was the Tatooine Manhunt. And it probably has deeply influenced, on a level I'm not prepared to admit, my adventure design. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and see if I can't find an archival backup copy of Tatooine Manhunt, and we will do a discussion of that, a review of a module you can't even get anymore today, but this is my show and I love talking about things that I love. We're going to talk about the Tatooine Manhunt next week. If I can find a copy of it. We'll see how good my Google Foo is. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. We'll be back on Tuesday with more Behind the Screen. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Until then, have a good one.